Laura or Stephen?
Yeah, I can second that.
Great, thank you. Okay, the first order of business, and sorry to all the planning applicants, we'll need to wait a little bit. We have a housing element update, and the town's consultant, Andrew Hill, or one of his colleagues, will be speaking to us.
Yeah, and so I'll go ahead and introduce actually myself and Andrew. My name is Rebecca Markwick. I'm the new Planning and Building Director. It's very nice to meet some of you and to see some of you again. And tonight we're lucky enough to have our housing element consultants here, Diet and Bhatia, and Andrew Hill is the principal who is working with us at the town of Ross. And he is going to sort of start this, he'll do a little PowerPoint presentation, and then he will hopefully generate a conversation, sort of an informal conversation about the housing element and sort of where we are and the next steps, and sort of promote some of the community events that we're having. So handing it over to you now, Andrew.
Good evening, everyone. So let me, I have a quick presentation. Rebecca, if you could just make me a co-host or let me share, I can put it up on the screen.
Okay, I just made you a co-host. It might take a minute.
Yep, nope, there it is. Now pull it up and put it into presentation mode. Can everyone see that? Wonderful, then I'll just get started. So as Rebecca said, my name is Andrew Hill. I'm with Diet and Bhatia. We're the planning and design firm that's assisting the town with the housing element process. And like other communities in the Bay Area, Ross is required to update its housing element, the housing element of its general plan, to address local housing needs and also to address new state law. Amid the ongoing housing shortage in California, Ross is required to plan for 111 new housing units over the next 8 years. So the project is really going to take a thoughtful approach to accommodating new housing while also preserving and enhancing the aspects of the unique and historic sense of place that Ross residents value so highly. So as we started up work on the project, I wanted to take the opportunity tonight to provide an orientation to the housing element, and also to receive some input, some initial input from the Advisory Design Review Group about design considerations for housing, and particularly for accessory dwelling units. So first off, what is a housing element? Well, it's one of the 8 required elements of the general plan under state law, along with land use and circulation, open space, conservation, safety, noise. The housing element is essentially the town's plan to address local housing needs. Unlike other elements of the general plan, the housing element must be updated on an 8-year cycle to plan for housing needs over the coming 8 years. And also, unlike other elements, it needs to be reviewed and certified by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. So for those reasons, it's usually published under a separate cover from the rest of the general plan, which is the case in Ross. So one of the key components of the housing element is an inventory of sites that are available for housing. Typically, that's presented in a table indicating the size of the parcel, the applicable zoning, and the realistic capacity. That means the number of units that are likely to be built on the parcel, given past trends and local conditions. The housing element also has to include an assessment of local housing needs, any potential constraints or barriers to housing development, fair housing issues, which means factors that can impede access to housing for disadvantaged groups like the disabled or the elderly or racially or linguistically isolated groups. In view of that assessment, the housing element also needs to include a program of actions to address those needs, any constraints to housing, and any fair housing issues identified. So the town's current housing element covers the
bedroom.
Sorry, maybe not. So the town's current housing element covers the period from 2015 to 2023. It includes the required inventory of housing sites. Currently, the inventory identifies 19 sites with a combined capacity of 44 new homes. Now, these are mostly single family homes, but there are some key sites like 37 Sir Francis Drake, which is a town-owned site, the Marin Art and Garden Center site, the Branson School site, and a couple of sites downtown where other housing is envisioned. And then additionally, the current inventory estimates that there's capacity for 90 accessory dwelling units throughout the town, and these are either second or caretaker units. So, oops, there we go. There we go. Yeah, so looking ahead to the next 8 years, in the upcoming housing element cycle, Ross is required, as I say, to plan for 111 new units between 2023 and 2031. This is Ross's share of the regional housing need as determined by the state, and it's broken out into 4 different income categories based on the median income in Marin County. So 111 units is a significant number for a town of 880 existing homes, but Ross is not alone. Other communities in Marin County also have a sizable allocation given the ongoing housing shortage in California. It's important to note, though, that the requirement is not for Ross to build all these units. That's down to economic and market factors. The legal requirement is only for Ross to zone for adequate capacity to accommodate those 111 units. Still, accommodating those units is going to be a challenge, and it's going to require a thoughtful strategy. But there are new state laws that offer opportunities for Ross. These laws seek to facilitate the development of smaller scale housing, like accessory dwelling units, that can be affordable to lower income households on the basis of their size, essentially units that would be affordable by design. So this type of unit would be appropriate for home help workers, maybe for seniors, or even for young adults starting out their careers. This type of unit offers Ross an avenue to accommodate its share of the regional housing need while also preserving those aspects of community character that residents value so highly. So the process is going to involve a careful look at past ADU production rates in order to project forward a trend. So really, the accessory dwelling units are really going to be a big part of this process. And as we start to think about promoting ADU development, we really wanted to get your perspective because that's going to be really valuable on this. So tonight we're looking at this as a first opportunity to get some feedback from the Advisory Design Review Group. In particular, it would be great to hear your thoughts on some questions that I've laid out on this slide. For example, what are some practical constraints to ADU production in Ross that should be addressed? Talking with some local architects, they've mentioned that perhaps there are some zoning standards that present problems. For example, if the 16-foot height limit, if you also have to raise the base flood elevation, that could be a constraint. That type of thing. We're interested to hear your perspective on some potential constraints for ADU production. In the same vein, in your review of ADU proposals that have come before you, do you notice any common recurring themes or issues that should be addressed? And then what makes for good ADU design in Ross? We'd like to hear your perspective on that so that we can take on board that feedback as we craft programs for the housing element. So this is an overall snapshot of the project timeline. The housing element will be completed in about 1 year's time. The adoption is anticipated for March of 2023. Throughout that phase, there'll be ongoing community engagement. For example, this summer, we're looking to hold a community open house and an online survey to give people an opportunity to learn more about the legal requirements and share their thoughts on potential actions to include in the plan. The draft housing element is expected to be on the street in September timeframe, and at that time we'll have another open house where people can come and learn about the contents and provide some feedback on the content at that stage. And then we've also set up a page on the town's website. It's dedicated to the housing element update project. There's a list of FAQs and a schedule up there. So encourage you or anyone, your neighbors or anyone who might be interested in the project to take a look at that. And also Rebecca, who you met earlier, it would be the main point of contact. So her contact details are up there. But with that, maybe I'll open it up for questions and answers. Happy to take any questions that you might have, and would love to hear some initial input from you on those questions that I raised. I think, Mark, you're on mute.
Can you go back to the spreadsheet you had that had a list of the various addresses and numbers?
Sure. Hang on a sec. This one.
There,
right?
that's it. So if I'm reading this correctly, you're saying that at 37 Sir Francis Drake, you could have a maximum of 4 units, and at the 39 Fern Hill, there could be a maximum of 32. And as far as Ross is concerned, it gets credit for all 4 plus 32 as long as it allows them, even if they're not built?
That's almost correct. So the maximum allowable is what you're reading, the number 4. Is that, am I reading that right? Let me just make sure I've got that right. The maximum allowable is the maximum allowed under the zoning. There's also a realistic capacity. And I'm looking for, so the realistic capacity is 3 units. And so those 3 units would be counted towards the allocation.
What creates the realistic? What's the criteria that's used to judge realism?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's based on past trends in the town, and you know, any factors, particular factors related to that site. So for example, if part of the site is in a flood zone, or if it's environmentally constrained for another way, that might limit the number of units you could get on the site.
So in that 39 Fern Hill site specifically, if the town worked with the landowner and said, oh, you can fit 12 there, we'll do something to make it so you can build 12, then the town gets credit for 12, whether or not the school builds.
Correct. If that's the realistic capacity, and we've demonstrated that that is realistic, then yes, that is correct.
Okay. And for as far as the income distribution is concerned of these units, it seems that it would be helpful to the town if people, when they're coming through the process, if they don't intend to rent them out, they could just say, well, put a very low income or low income designation on this, and then it sort of helps out the town and doesn't cost them anything unless they're trying to rent it for a market rate.
Well, actually, the ADUs, so the law provides for what are called safe harbors, which essentially means a way that you can project a certain number of units that HCD, an accepted methodology for projecting a number of accessory dwelling units. And HCD won't challenge you or hold you to a higher standard of proof. And so that is based on past production trends. And so it'll be really important to get a handle on how many units, 8 accessory dwelling units the town has permitted since 2018, which is the year a lot of those new laws came into place. And then take that number, if it's 10, if it's 12, on an annual basis, project that out for 8 years. And you can see, you know, if it's 10 accessory dwelling units per year on average since 2018, times 8, project that forward, you're well on your way to getting 111 units. And then the other thing with respect to the affordability is that the county has done an ADU affordability study, and we're expecting that the state will certify that. And that has a percentage of the ADUs that are deemed affordable to lower income sites. And that the Marin County study is not currently certified yet, but a similar study in Southern California said about 54% of the units can automatically be counted towards those lower income numbers. And so I'm expecting something similar to come out of the Marin County study. So, so that means that we won't necessarily have to get people to sign on a dotted line and say, that they're going to rent to lower income units. We can do it on the basis of the study that the state will have certified, if that's making sense.
Okay, yes. And you're allowed to just project what your current rate is going forward, even though eventually, obviously, you'd run out of parcels. If there are 850 parcels in Ross, you can't project it out 100 years at 10 per year because you run out of places.
Right.
But you're allowed to do that?
Well, that's a good point. I think that Ross is a very unique community. I don't think there's another community in the state that's going to be able to satisfy most of its RHNA, most of its allocation through ADUs. And so it could well be that the state is going to ask for some additional analysis. And so we will have to take a look at where ADUs have been built and demonstrate that there really is realistic capacity for whatever number we come up with, whether it's 90 or something. But I think there's a strong past performance since 2018 in ADU applications and permits. So we have solid grounds for that. But you're right, it's not an infinite capacity.
Okay, and I'm sorry, and you also, do you want to hear from us now as to the trends, what we're seeing?
Yeah, I'd be interested if we have a little time on your agenda tonight. I had some thoughts here. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on these questions based on, over the last few years. I know that you've probably weighed in on accessory dwelling unit applications, and we'd be interested to hear your perspective on any potential constraints that could be addressed, or also just more generally about what you all feel makes for good ADU design.
Well, in the smaller lots, it is helpful when they're allowed to be attached to the existing home, because people just don't have room for an attractive separate structure. When people have larger yards, they tend to like their renters to be very close to the pool we're seeing. Stephen or Laura, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
To the first question, practical constraints, I think the 16-foot one is a constraint, a somewhat restrictive constraint when it relates to base flood elevation, as you pointed out, and maybe there should be some relief granted to increase the allowable height proportional to or equal to the FEMA requirement of 1 foot above base flood elevation. Also, I find that the design, and I don't know how this fits into the state regulation, but I think that the 16-foot height limit, especially when combined with some topography constraints or with the base flood elevation or both, makes for pretty lackluster design when it comes to the ADUs. And if we're asking the ADUs, one of the principles is to make it fit into the context of the architecture and be a good partner to the primary residents on the lot. Oftentimes there are historic homes that have steeper roof pitches, and I would be interested in a higher allowable height limit given as relief from the requirement if it provided for stronger design. And I think that a steeper roof pitch is stronger design in some instances, not all. I think it's contextually appropriate and has to do with massing and privacy and other stuff, of course, shading and stuff like that. But so, and then also another one, I think it's the state decrees, or maybe it's our interpretation, but I know it to be in all other jurisdictions, that you must respect the front setback that is by zoning for that parcel, but then there's relief granted to the side and rear property lines, the 4 foot deal, which is great. The front setback discourages, I think, several ADU applications from coming to pass because in certain sites that are particularly upsloping, where there's kind of a good amount of topography change from the street to the house, there's not a practical place to put the ADU, maybe at the back of some of these sites, and they could go above the garage or in the front, or be designed new with a garage incorporated perhaps in a way that is totally contextually appropriate historically, because there are garages along the street front. But I think people are shy to produce such a proposal because it costs dough to produce that proposal, and it requires design review. And we are shy to encourage nonconformities or variances, or if an ADU requires design review or council approval, then I think people are shy about that. Those are the constraints that come to the top of my
That's
head.
great. Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful input.
Laura, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I mean, not much. I mean, I think two things that come up a lot is just that the aesthetic or the design of the ADU be in the same language of the house. And then another thing is just, thoughtful siting with the location of where you're putting this ADU, where we're kind of not really supposed to ask questions, but just taking into consideration where the neighbors are and how it impacts them.
Laura's referencing that we do not comment on ADUs when they are ministerially approvable. So if a project comes to us and it has a part of a project that is subject to design review, we avoid or don't discuss the design of the ADU generally if it conforms to the rote requirements of 4-foot setback side and rear, front setback equal to zoning designation, and 16 feet and 800 square feet. And so I think we'd love to comment somewhat, get our hands in those a little bit, but it's okay not to. We understand the streamlining of the process to benefit and encourage more ADU being produced.
Right. Off the top of your head, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot, but are there any, is it really very contextual, the privacy issue, or is there anything that isn't in the ADU ordinance or the zoning standards now that could be added to better protect privacy, even in the case of ministerial ADUs?
There's one fine pointed piece of code. We consider a corner lot to have a front and sides and a rear that are based according to what the shorter frontage is. So when a corner property fronts on two streets, is by definition, I guess, corner property, the front is determined to be the shorter of the two frontages. And therefore an ADU can stand very close to the street, or to kind of within 4 feet of the long street, as it were. And that seems odd. And that has to do with our own interpretation of where we apply setbacks on corner lots, if you catch the drift. So I think that allows for somewhat noxious placement in some instances. I don't think it's a very high use case, but we saw one recently where that was a totally legal placement within 4 feet of the street, because we see that as a side yard, which I think is just our mistake. That's in our code, and I think it's an error in our code. I think that the remark that Mark made about mostly these things are pool houses is tongue in cheek. I think it's, as long as the thing is a unit and could be rented out, I think that's fulfilling the spirit of the law, and I don't not just the letter, the spirit, because your parents could move in there, or you can have a nanny live there and that all is housing stock that I think helps the state. But I don't think we look very carefully at how is independent access provided to that unit when it is going to double as a pool house, which is totally fine and legal. But is there anything in our code or the state law about how it's reasonably accessed? So that really could be, for times that property would wish it to be occupied by a separate person or persons. Is that reasonable?
Yeah. Anyway, that's an interesting perspective too. Maybe something we could look at again with your input later on in the process of how to maybe build that into the code to the extent that it's not there. But anyway, to your larger point, I definitely think that ADUs contribute, even if they're not being rented right away. They're increasing the housing stock, and at some point they could be used. So I think that's an important point to make when in the housing element and in discussions with HCD.
So on your last question, what makes for good AD design? I think sensitive placement, but not always are we commenting on placement because of the ministerial review process. That's okay. But maybe if we gave a little bit greater relief due to topography or height, or I don't know what else, we could encourage a little bit more creativity. One of the things, you're limited to how big the patio is or entranceway such that it be minimum by code to get your butt in the door, kind of. And so certain things like that make for kind of a cruddy design. We're going to end up with a box. It's going to have a shallow slip roof. It's going to have a little kind of entranceway that isn't very elegant. And so I don't know if we can overlay the state code by saying, you can do a porch, it doesn't count against your square footage. You can do this, or subject to kind of it being contextually cool. You can take advantage of some of these things at the discretion of the council, But it would be neat to see a little bit greater creativity than, a 20 by 40 box with a shallow pitch roof and
Great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your time and the presentation, Andrew. We appreciate it, and it's nice to learn more about the upcoming changes in the town.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the planning applications. Before we do, I'll introduce myself. I'm Mark Kruchnet, ADR member. We have two other ADR members here tonight, Stephen and Laura.
Hi.
Just waved and said hello. The way this works, we have two returning projects, a new project, and a conceptual advisory design review project. The town presents a project first, then the owner or their team presents. The ADR members ask questions of them if we have any. After we're done asking our questions, we open it up to the public, who may either ask questions or comment on the project for up to 3 minutes. And once that open comment time is finished, we bring it back to the ADR, where the three of us make our recommendations to the town council. The first project tonight is a returning project, 5 Ames Avenue. And I'll let Matthew introduce it.
Yes, thank you, Chair and ADR group members. This is the second review for a revised project design at 5 Ames Avenue. I'll just provide a very brief oral introduction to the project, and then I think it would be probably best use of time if the architect went and had time to describe the changes and the response to comments to the previously provided comments. So this project proposes renovations to the existing single-family house, some additions, also renovation and addition to the existing garage and pool house, and a new accessory structure, including an ADU at the ground floor, and some landscape changes as well. There's no updates to the code requirements from last time. And that concludes my presentation or my introduction. The architect is Ken Catton, and I believe he can present additional information in terms of how he has revised the project in accordance with the ADR group's comments from the previous meeting. And I can share the current project plans on the screen while he does so as well.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Thanks, Matthew. I'll try to keep this as short as possible. Would you mind giving us a 0.1, please? Thank you. So just the broad view, where we have the middle building, the existing pool house, which we're trying to modernize and make more functional. All the uses are there now. There is the ADU added to the left of the pool house on the downhill underneath the pool deck. And above it is a just an accessory open air cabana structure, which just puts a little shelter over the activities that already happened there. And then the third component is basically redoing the exterior portions of the main residence, mostly the porch, and then the wall surfaces with a few window and door revisions to make the entry a little more pronounced. As you can see in the middle existing drawing, it's really hard to find the front door. So we've been working in the pool house with, in response mostly in addition to the group's comments, were our neighbors, the Livermores at 2 Ames, which are across the street. So we've, since the last meeting, we've lowered the roof of the cabana and the pool house another foot. So it's 3 feet below the original storylines that were put up. And we've also reduced the east facing on Ames doors and windows by a third to still allow the views that are important to the east out over the hills, but out of respect for the Livermore's concern about privacy, which we're sensitive to. I know when they purchased a house below another house that's up higher on the hill, that sort of inherent challenges with privacy. But in their house ranges from 130 to almost 200 feet away, their windows. So we feel like we've worked pretty hard to address the privacy concerns, and their windows are pretty far away. So we're feeling pretty good about that. The bigger issue from last time is the main house porch. Matthew, would you mind going to A3.3? So in the upper drawing, you can see previously in red was we were proposing to redo the porch roof higher and with more overhang. And so in taking the group's comments, we've decided to go ahead and we lowered it 2 feet, pushed it back in 2 feet to reduce its scale. Additionally, the outside corners of the roof wrapped all the way around, and now we've notched them, along with notching the deck itself. So the presentation of the deck and the porch roof are less massive than they are even existing, with the corners notched out. Additionally, if you look at the lower drawing, the entry, we've added at the upper, it's kind of hard to see on this drawing, but we've added some louver screening on the top of those transom windows to create more privacy and cut down some of the illuminated glass effect that was mentioned. And those louvers match the design of the louvers that are proposed at the pool house. Additionally, the lower windows to the left and the right of the front door, currently they're a lower head height and just the old windows, and we're going to replace those and raise the head height so they're more consistent with the presentation of the rest of the new buildings. Matthew, would you mind going to A3.2? So if you go to the upper left corner, you get another view just of the dimension we've lowered the roof to is lining up with the existing bottom eave of the existing porch roof. So that dimension is only 7'4" off the porch. So it's already pretty low as it is. So we feel like this is probably as compact a haircut as we want to give this and still have it be functional and sort of accomplish the goals. So Matthew, could you go to a 2.0, please? So one of the other comments at the end was, if you look at the south wall, the left side of the ADU, that was a continuous wall running east to west that had a large storage room underneath. And there was concern about the continuous face of that wall. So we have basically moved most of that storage to this little elbow between the garage and the ADU. It's all subterranean under the pool deck. We can access it by the stair that's going to be there from the pool deck to the south of the garage. And that allows us to, we've still got mechanical and pool equipment going at the end of the ADU as a basement. But we pulled that wall in where the stair is shown about 5 feet to break up that plane. Matthew, could you go to A3.1, please? So if you look at the upper left, where the sort of darker green is, that wall has been stepped back 5 feet, and we had a door to the storage that eliminated on the face. It's on the side. This all allows more screening to be planted that Brad will get to. I also want to point out, it's pretty heavily wooded along that upper Ames, in addition to the planting that's proposed. I think it's going to be very difficult from the upper Ames to see anything on this facade.
Ken, I'm sorry. So this is a rather small on my screen, so I just have a question because I can't read something. On the outdoor cabana over the ADU, what is the height from on the left wall of that, from the bottom all the way to the top of the roof?
From the left side
Yes.
down to the grade line.
Yes. Okay. So let's see. It looks like it's 5 plus 21.8. So 26.8.
Yes,
Okay.
on the steepest side. Yeah,
Yeah, on the steepest side.
corner. Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, that runs through the adjustments from the group. If you have any other questions for me.
And is any of the outdoor cabana in a setback? It looks like it's not from the dotted
No, there's-
lines from the top.
No setbacks, no variances required.
Okay. Stephen and Laura, do either of you have any questions?
I do have one, which is, I know you're not planning to renovate the main house extensively on the interior, I gather. But could you explain the thought process behind not removing the sloped roof and behind keeping the slope? And I'm having a little bit of trouble with the buildings not matching. So I want to hear the logic of that.
Sure. Well, if you'll remember last time I had the roof raised because you really, and there really are no hills around this where you would see this other than the one house behind. The goal at that point originally was to have it appear from almost everywhere that it was a flat roof. Just the cost.
I understand the illusion. I'm asking.
Yeah, so sort of giving up on that idea. I think the notion here is that there's the existing house and cost alone for that roof is full of all the mechanical, electrical, and it's a roof that really is not seen much because the house.
So the argument is that it's costly and it's not visible. Is that correct?
No, it's just taking into yeah, those are both contributing factors. But I think architecturally, the idea is that these sort of accessory buildings of the pool house and the cabana are the client's interested in a more contemporary look. And so, what's really sort of true to the history of this is, even though we're going to clean it up and it's going to be a very quiet palette, the main house, we're connecting to the modern contemporary element, really just with this wraparound portico element, which is a way of tying it in, but saying it doesn't have to be identical. It could be part of a family, especially since the other two buildings are, secondary structures to sort of the original main house. So, it's meant to be something that looks like it's been evolved over time, and the new parts are clear from the old parts.
Thank you.
Laura, do you have any comments or questions before I open it up to the public?
Yeah, just curious why it's changing from like a darker materials that kind of blend in more to something that looks nearly white.
Well, we're just looking for something, like I said, that's really quiet, that just is just a clean, sort of non-color. It could be kind of a slightly, it's a slightly off-white is kind of what we're picturing, more like a light gray. But the idea is that it feels very, and it's, as you can see, it's surrounded by trees and greenery. And so you'll have this sort of filtered shadows, and there's all the decks and the overhangs are going to put it in a lot of shadow and more than this rendering is showing. But just trying to lighten it up and be a little more cheerful.
Is there a material board or a photographs of the material somewhere?
Yeah, and I noticed Brad didn't get a chance to talk about his landscape yet, but the materials are on.
Almost.
You go forward. There you go.
There, thank you. Okay.
Did you see what you were looking for there, Stephen?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. Okay, I will now open it up to the public. We've received some letters, both from ADR members that couldn't be here tonight and from the public. If there's anybody who would like to speak, now would be a good time to raise your hand, and Matthew can give you the floor for a few minutes.
I don't see anybody with their hands raised.
I'm trying to, I don't know how to do it.
You're on, Sam.
You
We
can
hear
go
you.
ahead and speak
Okay.
without raising your hand.
I don't see the little icon anywhere on my Zoom screen. I don't know where it's gone. Anyway, I thank you for listening to me. And I still want to thank the Swires and for Ken. They did a very nice job addressing the concerns. And I think that's great. They've been good communicators. The dilemma from our point of view just remains the fact that I guess the combination of the topography and its uphill slope relative to us makes it just very, very hard to come up with any design that doesn't sort of appear more imposing to us, looking up and basically now seeing, even though they're lower, they're still big boxes up on the hill. And especially as Steve was suggesting, the incompatibility between the box on the left and the box on the right is sort of just jarring a little bit. And the lighter colors that Laura was mentioning are a little bit jarring. And I understand that they lowered the height per our request. They reduced the fenestration, as I said in my letter. But it's unfortunate that the relationship between their house and our house and all the houses actually along Ames is so dominating of the area in terms of our visibility and the feeling of loss of privacy. I know you can't avoid that because the house is already there, and somebody said, yes, we bought the house knowing that was there. But this project seems to exacerbate that in the sense that it's just more mass. It's more substance up there that we wish could be mitigated further. And frankly, I guess maybe we're traditionalists, and we'd be much happier, frankly, if it was a more traditional design with slope roofs, which are less jarring to us than the boxes that they're going to now appear to be from our point of view. but I don't think I need to repeat all the comments in our comment letter. And again, I just want to acknowledge that the Swires and Ken have done a nice job trying to address our concerns.
Thank you, Sam. Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak before I bring it back to the ADR for comments?
Sorry,
Okay.
I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Laura or Stephen, would one of you like to go first? Okay. Was that a no from you also, Laura?
If nobody else wants to go, I can go. Yeah.
Why don't you go first? I'll go second. Stephen seemed reluctant, so he can go third on this one.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I think, I mean, I definitely think that they've made great improvements from the last presentation. Reducing the eaves and lowering some of the heights of the pool house is helpful. I think, and moving that storage so that there's less of the wall. One thing that really I was noticing today was just that, like the material palette and the colors. And I suppose if there's lots of screening, it will mitigate that, but it just seems that adding all these solid walls that are off-white is going to stand out a lot more and look like a lot more built up than what they have right now. I think also, I said this last time, but just with the pool house and like the space above the garage, having that balcony step out towards the neighbors just doesn't, I guess they wanted to break up the facade, but it just doesn't seem like the right way to do that. Especially if there's a neighbor where there's already a privacy concern. That pool house, the walls open up completely to the pool, so it kind of becomes part of that space. It just doesn't feel like a necessary move. And so that was one thought. And I think the cabana, for me, I guess it makes it feel a lot more built up, more bulk and mass. I question if it's really necessary, but if it's not in the setback, then I suppose it would be, I guess it's okay. It seems like it'll add a lot to what's open right now with just the open decking. It'll make it feel like 3 buildings, kind of like a compound. And I think the main house, would it look better with a flat roof? Sure, but is this a way to improve the property that works with the client's budget and desires? Then, you know, I'm okay with that, with kind of combining this new style onto what's there. So that's where I'm at with all of this.
Okay. For me, and Joey, who isn't here tonight, just wrote in as a public comment. And regarding the roof, and I'm just reading this because I agree with her assessment. The peaked roof should come off in the main house, and it should be done right if a modern aesthetic is desired with both buildings matching one another. What she felt doesn't work, and I agree with her, is the combination of the modern building on the left and the other building on the right, where we're sort of trying to cover up something, but not really covering it up. So I still have a problem with the juxtaposition of the style of the 2 buildings, which I think in many instances that juxtaposition can be great. Here, it seems to not really be working well. And I think it's because we're trying to make one look a little like the other, but it doesn't seem to work. And the other issue I have with this project is the cabana, which you mentioned, and it's not in the setback, which is great. However, things are supposed to sort of be built into a hillside and not projecting from the hillside. And in this particular case, it's visible from the road, and it's a, 26.5 foot wall going up from the bottom all the way to the top of the cabana. And if you just took out all the structures on top of the ADU, I think the placement of the ADU is great. And I think you could have a lovely pool deck there. I would recommend just not having those structures that Laura mentioned that add the mass to it. So those are the two things that I have trouble with. And I'll let Steve talk before we sort of summarize our final recommendations here.
To clarify, Mark, by structures related to the ADU, are you talking about the balcony at the front and the overhang there specifically?
Sorry, I'm talking about the cabana and the roof structure that's on top of the ADU that's open. And I believe that's the fireplaces and then a trellised roof that doesn't count as a
The
roof
cabana.
because it's open.
The cabana.
Yes, the cabana.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Cool. Okay, I'll go. I think the design is really nice. I think the design of the ADU is great. I think the design of the cabana is really nice. And I think the changes to the house are really nice. I think that the roof line of the cabana is just a little too tall to meet the criteria of fitting well into the topography, and just feels contextually not quite right. And so if the roof of the cabana were removed, I could support the project completely as designed everywhere in the area of the ADU and the cabana. As designed, I still have trouble with the height of the roof and it's kind of the projection over the streetscape. So I don't have any brilliant suggestions for that. I see that the head height inside the cabana, I think, is 10'3". So maybe you could lower that to 9 feet or 9'6". I recognize that it's a big space and proportionally you want tall ceilings. So I don't have a great suggestion or an easy fix, but I was going to wait to hear what Laura and Mark said about the cabana, because I'm kind of on the bubble of its contextual appropriateness. The changes that were made to the main house relative to the height of the eave are great. And I think that it doesn't now kind of feel like it's changing the context or the apparent mass of the main building. So I'm supportive of the size and the kind of the rhythm of the columns and everything about the main house. I just wish it had a flat roof because I'm a traditionalist and I want everything to kind of match across the property. And I don't, and I wanted to hear what everyone else said about that before commenting, because I feel like I'm being cranky about it. But I don't know that it meets the criteria of excellence of design, or however that phrase is stated in our design review guidelines. That's our charge to kind of reflect upon and make advice to the council on. And it's our charge as the public to adhere to. It just doesn't feel like excellent design. I know that there's a history of the building, and if you can see kind of what's changed over time, okay, fine. But to put a modern facade on the bones of a slightly more traditional structure just doesn't feel quite right to me. So if that roof line were changed, I would 100% support the volume and everything that's about the main house. And I support the ADU as designed. I support the balcony on the front of the ADU. I know that Laura, you mentioned you're uncomfortable with the glass there at the front and stuff. I just like that it makes it somewhat articulate at the front. And I'm slightly uncomfortable with the height of the cabana roof.
Okay, so we sort of got a bunch of opinions going. I'm thinking it might be best for both the project team and or town council. Maybe we can break this into two things and see if we can get recommendations for both, or a consensus, being two of the three of us, related to the roof of the main house and the roof on top of the ADU, the cabana roof, the trellised roof, because those seem to be the two things that we're talking about most. Would that seem right?
I think that's right.
Okay. Do you want to do it in the same order or reverse? Well, we'll do reverse order now. So you're saying, Stephen, you're a little torn on the cabana roof, whether or not it should exist or not. It feels a little too tall to you.
Mhm.
For me, I just like to see the roof go away and then I'd be fine with it. Laura, how do you feel about the roof now that you've listened to Stephen's opinion on it?
Yeah, no, I was trying to be supportive, but I do think it would be a lot less imposing to take that roof off. You can still have all the same elements, but it just makes it feel like a third building. And I did notice off of the pool house, there's like a soffit that comes out and extends towards the pool. So maybe that's something that could be extended further to create additional shade. But yeah, so I would have to agree that I think it would look better without the structure, the cabana.
Okay, and then on the main house roof and architectural changes to that, which are changing the structure of the main house and somewhat mirroring but not matching the adjacent building over the garage, with the garage and that structure. I was opposed to that because to me, it didn't seem to match enough. Laura, Stephen, what would be your sort of overall final recommendation summary for that part of the project?
I'll go ahead. I would say that I'm supportive because I mean, I think you're probably not going to see from like the perspective, you're not going to see that roof that much. And if it makes somebody want to improve their house and spend the money to do so, but that's something that they're not willing to budge on, then I would still support it as designed right now.
Okay, and Stephen?
So on the main house, so you're asking, Mark?
Yeah, the main house.
I don't know how to summarize my feelings. I can support the project of the changes to the main house completely, with a strong recommendation that the roof line be changed to match the ADU.
So you're saying that, are you more saying with Laura that it should be approved as is and you'd like it if they changed it, or are you more sort of in my camp saying it needs to be changed in order to be recommended to the town council?
Bah.
I think you need to choose one of those two.
No, I don't think I need to. I'm going to abstain from that. Yeah. I don't think, I think that we can send it to council with the myriad of suggestions and without a firm vote, Mark.
Okay, so then Matthew, the summary is that there is no recommendation from the ADR. The ADR was unable to make a majority decision when it comes to the house, the main house, and in regards to the pool house, the majority did feel that the trellised roof should be removed from the struck on top of the ADR.
Or lowered to mitigate its effect.
Okay, I think we have those comments, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. The next project is 3 Willow Hill Road, which we've seen before. Matthew, would you like to refresh people's memory and show us the changes that have been made to the project?
Yes, thank you, Chair and ADR group members. Similar to the last project, this an original project design was reviewed at the last ADR group meeting, and the ADR group did recommend some changes, and the applicant has resubmitted a revised project design. I think it would be probably best use of time for the architect to reference the drawings and provide their description of changes and responses to comments. I would just note that again, there's no change to the code requirements for this project in comparison to the last project, although as Andrew Fisher will describe, there are changes to the actual project itself. And I can also share the project plans on the screen while Mr. Fisher presents that information. So that concludes my presentation or introduction to the project, and I'll turn it over to others. Thank you.
Thanks.
I go now?
You're up, Andrew.
Okay, sorry. Well, maybe thanks again for your attention tonight. And we, I think, left that meeting last month with some constructive suggestions that I think we were able to kind of address each and every one of those. So maybe the best thing to do would be to look at the drawings, Matthew, if you have them up, and I can just go through those briefly. And this is, I think, just maybe the best sort of sheet to start with. And the most obvious change here is taking the rectilinear shape of the previous design and curving the edges of the outer deck to better conform and pull it away from the hillside. The previous design, I think, just by virtue of having a straight line there, had exaggerated edges that were the focus of a lot of commentary about their height. So what we've done, again, is there, I don't know, significant changes because it's a small area, but what we were able to do in, of course, radiusing those ends addressed two issues, one of which is the perceived height of this structure at the base of the building. But it also helped us with one of the other comments, which was the building coverage requirements. So if I just sort of maybe focus on the building coverage requirements as a first note. So we went from the previous proposal of over 16% building coverage, and we were able, it was suggested to get it under 15%. We were able to, just by these changes, bring it to just over 14%. So we're at 14.1%. And that's a combination of both the shape of the outer deck. We reduced the width of the pool. We reduced the width of the walkway that is between the house and the pool. We eliminated, there was a perimeter walk around, as it were, on the northern edge of the pool that we eliminated. We replaced that with an overflow edge or an infinity edge. It's a waterfall edge. It basically allows us to not have any structure on that side. And then the spillover would go down into our, we're still keeping that idea of the terrace planter wall 30 inches below the deck to also help mitigate, you know, some of the effects of structure on a hillside, and also, again, to eliminate the need for guardrails and things like that. So another significant change that was recommended was trying to increase the rear yard setback from our previous application. So we went from 9 feet. Now we are at 13.9 from the rear setback, which is currently the edge of the pool. That infinity or waterfall edge is currently at the same point as there's a current lower deck there, elevated deck that has a spa in it currently. And so we're able to pull the edge of the pool back to that location, and also the existing deck that's there now is about a foot higher or so than our current proposal. Let's see, so in order to, we haven't changed the elevation of the pool deck, in its relationship to the house. I think that we have that as low and as separated as we would want to practically keep it from the access to the house. But by virtue of reshaping this the walls, and by pulling it back from the rear setback, we're able to kind of restore the natural state of the hillside there, which has been altered. I don't know when, but it's been benched off essentially to create a flat spot, which is the rear yard. So I think that's kind of an unusable space. So what we're doing is pulling the hillside back up to, again, its natural state, which would mitigate the height of those walls. And I can go, and I think the elevations illustrate, maybe best how that has been impacted. We've revised the materiality of this lower planter wall, where previously it was going to become a green wall with kind of a lagging structure behind it, faced with hog wire or metal mesh. We've replaced that, because the walls are now lower, with what occurred to us is to face them or build them out of what is currently, you see as you enter the Willow Hills private driveway, and some of the site walls that line Willow Hill are these stacked kind of Napa stone walls that have well, very much an earthy feel, can have things grow in them. And I think it contextually kind of links it back to some of the things that are happening around this particular property and then further up on the hillside. So the planting plan kind of abandoned sort of more of that decorative growth, and I think to address some of the privacy issues and certainly what it can do for sound, and replacing that with a more naturalistic planting arrangement of oak trees and evergreen trees and shrubs at the base of this pool. That would, I think, not delineate the hillside as a stopping and then something else happening, but we're just, again, this idea of pulling the hillside up right to the deck and pool structure. So let's see. I think if we go, maybe I can just go through each of these sheets. If we go to the A2.1, which is a sort of a plan. Oh, so I'm sorry, Matthew. If we could actually go back to the zoning requirements, A5, 0.5, there we go. So one of the other comments was, I think one of you brought up the fact of the appropriateness of a pool on the hillside. Certainly the neighbors have raised that as a concern. But when I was there last, there's literally a pool on a hillside, not at all dissimilar to what we're proposing, which is just to the west of Scott's property here at 3 Willow Hill. And then just by doing some sort of research and mapping, we were able to, on the hillside, find a smattering of pools that are existing and that are up there, currently, and all of them on the hillside. We haven't even looked at the pools that are kind of down on the kind of flatter areas of Madrone, but it seems like there's an abundance of pools in this area. So I just thought that was a kind of an interesting or helpful diagram to kind of help with our argument that this is an appropriate building site for a pool. So from there, we can go maybe to the A2.1. There we go. And so this is just more of a kind of a close-up idea. We were able to reduce and mitigate the size of the pool by and also help with the deck by actually pulling the spa out of the pool body and kind of making it a rounded form that would sit on the deck. The overspill or this waterfall edge would go down into a catch basin, which would also be kind of faced with that rock wall. And just doing some research on these pools and trying to find kind of examples of more naturalistic. There are even things that you can do in the overspill to utilize kind of biomass to help the filtration of the pool. And I thought that could be an interesting idea to help filter the water as the water spills over this edge and into the catch basin, because that's how the water is actually recirculated in the pool. We haven't changed anything to the stair. That mass, everybody, I think, seemed to feel pretty comfortable with, and as well as the upper deck. Just a minor change, we the stair that takes you down from the deck and back onto the driveway, or that area of which we were also, I mean, part of our proposal originally was to eliminate that driveway and all that asphalt and kind of return that more to a garden area and some of the hillside restoration. But by virtue, I think, of turning that stair at a 90 degrees, we're able to kind of tuck it up against the house more to make it kind of, I think, better folded into the structure of the house. And it just seemed like, even though this was more of a voluntary thing, but it has nothing to do with the building coverage, but it seemed like there was a lot of deck. And so we kind of created this kind of space between the upper walkway off the bedrooms and the lower pool area to further kind of create some green areas and even get some shade, nice shade plants in there that I think would add a layer of softness to the whole kind of proposal. So from here, if we go, I think the best, maybe A 3.0, which is the section, and that north elevation. So from here, you can kind of see the way that the hillside has come up further to the pool walls. That leading edge of the northern edge of the pool wall has been reduced from at its lowest point from 5 feet down to 3 feet. So we're able to kind of mitigate that a couple feet. Didn't have a dramatic change at that edge because it's still a flat form against the hillside, but where it really, I think, made an impact, if we go to A 3.1, was on this side where that wall went from 11, close to 12 feet tall, and now at its highest point is at 7'6". And then you can kind of see illustrated here the texture of the rock wall there. There's no railing associated with the pool deck. And then on 3.2, which is, there we go. Again, kind of the same argument. This went from 10'7" down to 4'6". So I think that again made a big impact. And frankly, I think these kind of radius edges have most probably the least visibility from the neighborhood too. So, but I think it's an improvement, frankly, over what we were proposing to do before. So I think that those comments from the last meeting we took to heart and were very, I think, helpful for us to kind of re-examine this and not kind of give up on the concept. I think that if you go to just the material one, I think material page A5.0, so I just included, I think no longer doing that hog wire, but I just included a picture of one of the walls along Willow Hill. To give an example of some of the textural softness and interest of that kind of natural material, and how that I think forming the base and plinth for this house, I think could be a very successful design solution. I think that's about it. I talked a little bit about, just we changed the landscape plan, eliminated a lot of the kind of more decorative material that would have grown up on the screen wall, and have replaced that with the more naturalistic kind of vegetation that already exists on the hillside. So that's what I got.
All right, well, thank you, Andrew, for the presentation. Stephen and Laura, before I open it up to the public, do you have any questions of either Andrew or Matthew about the project?
Yes, I do. Do you mind just to kind of explain the findings for this project for why a variance should be granted?
All three of them, or well, I think that, well, look, well, certainly the biggest kind of, I don't know, factor here that why we're even asking for a variance. And this again illustrates that top left-hand corner, those are the setback lines. And actually the rear setback crosses the front yard setback. So there's the setbacks for this property are based on, you know, zoning for a 5-acre site. So they make absolutely no sense to this property. And there's really no way, I don't think you could build anything or accommodate anything without asking for a variance here. So in terms of, and that is for the setbacks, but it's also for the building coverage. Because if you look at, you know, a 10% building coverage for a 5-acre lot, it's an enormous structure. This is a very modest house, you know, and a very kind of modest impact on even its half-acre parcel. So I think that that's most probably the route for, or the biggest factor in asking, or why we're asking for a variance. There are certainly aspects to this site, and I think challenges of a hillside where you really have to create level ground and outdoor space adjacent to the house. Bending things out along the sides, moving things farther away just becomes an accessibility issue, I think, and how you get to these spaces. So I think just for the enjoyment of this property, and certainly outdoor enjoyment, it seems like there's a definite you know, the nature of the outdoor activity in Ross and this hillside has a lot to do with, I think, pools and the recreational elements around a pool. And I know that Scott wants to do this for his own enjoyment, but for his kids' enjoyment. You know, they are spending a lot more time at home, I think, and, you know, like all of us, they're not having access to or maybe not fully going back to the public realm in order, you know, to get that enjoyment. So it seems to me that, you know, that's a feature that a lot of these properties enjoy, and I can't see a good reason why this property shouldn't have that same kind of advantage. I think when we also went into this project and the nature of this hillside and this building site, there's an area, if you were to see the building here, you'd actually think it's in properly zoned with all of the open space around it, even though it's not part of this property, but there's a 2-acre unbuildable kind of swatch of land that's below between the rear yard and Madrone that's not going to be built on. And it's effectively, you know, I look at it as the rear yard to this property. You know, the rear yard, the actual property line seems a little kind of arbitrary, and you don't really even know where it is effectively. So it just seemed like a very reasonable kind of request or proposal, you know. So those are the primary, I think, factors for the variance. And then I think the last is, you know, not creating a detriment or, you know, making big impacts on neighbors. Again, I think just that this building is so isolated, so screened, it's, you know, a good, I don't know, maybe 150, 100 elevational feet above Madrone Street. Madrona, excuse me. It's heavily kind of screened by these very mature trees. I know some of them are being thinned out or taken down by PG&E. So I really feel like you got to try hard to feel the impact of this building. Noise mitigation, you know, there's commentary about sound traveling down, you know, sound is omnidirectional. It goes up, goes down, goes out to the sides, it goes up, you know, goes everywhere. So I think that that's just the nature of living in an urban environment. You know, we do live in an urban environment. You know, this is, as much as we'd like to think we're out in the countryside, we're, you know, 2 minutes from San Rafael, 15 minutes from San Francisco, and, you know, and there's a density here. And also, you know, again, I think that there's enough pool activity and outdoor activity that I just don't think that this property should be the sole holder of, quiet time. I don't know. So,
Right. Thank you, Andrew. That's fine. And that's more of a town council issue anyway, as far as findings for a variance. But thank you. Okay, Laura or Stephen, do you have any more questions before I open it up to the public for comment? Okay, Matthew, would you like to open it up to the public to see if anyone has any comments or questions?
Yes, it looks like Scott Fletcher is raising his hand. So Scott, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Rebecca. I just wanted to introduce myself because I didn't get a chance last time. I'm Scott Fletcher. We have lived here for the last about 4 years. I have two 11-year-olds who are in 5th grade at Ross and are very much looking forward to enjoying a pool with their friends. We plan on being here for quite some time. I've served on the Ross School Foundation for the last 4 years, and this is home for us, and we certainly look forward to having a pool here. So thank you for listening to us.
Thanks, Scott.
We also have Adrienne Labonte Liggett. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. You are muted, so you'll have to unmute yourself.
Hi, so I am the resident that lives below Scott's property down at 10 Madrona, and I have serious concerns. I appreciate the design. It is beautiful, but this project's only been moved 4 feet within a setback from last time. The pool is still looming over us down below. I think there's a serious concerns about the privacy. Just walking down Willow Hill, you can see into our backyard, into our very private courtyard. I have concerns with the deck being built out that far. I don't see how this project meets the need for a variance. It's not a hardship case. And I strongly oppose this project.
Thank you, Adrienne.
Next, Alex Uline. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly.
Yeah, that's okay. Alex Uline. We live at 9 Willow Hill, just above Scott, and know him to be a great neighbor. He and his 2 kids, and just want to come out in support of the project. I really think that this is not going to be not going to have as big of an impact as everyone thinks. I know that he'll really work, and his contractor will work hard to mitigate the construction impact and going forward from there. So completely support the project. We have a pool on the hillside here too, and it hasn't been an issue for anyone.
Thank you, Alex.
Next, we have Michael Rosenbaum.
Good evening. This is Michael Rosenbaum and Elika Rosenbaum. We live at 14 Madrona Avenue in Ross, and we've lived here for over 33 years. We're a hard no on this. We thought the project was kind of dead. We were blindsided by the project a month ago. There's been no neighborhood engagement as the comedy in Ross would require, of just getting together saying, I'd like to build something, I want your input, but we have heard nothing. We currently are burdened by a pool at 147 Lagunitas, and when their 11-year-old kids grow up and now are high schoolers, we get to hear all the parties, all the noise, and enjoy many nights of non-quiet nights. And our 3 bedrooms face this project and are at the same level. So
it's an acoustic issue with the canyon here that is what's giving you all the negative remarks from the Madrona neighbors. There's a really unusual set of acoustics, and we hear the Willow Hill. We don't hear up at the Hobart's old house, the pool, because of where it's situated. This one just pours right in, and it reverberates down here. We hear 15 Madrona. The Roses complain about the noise off the hill. It's not something that's easily mitigated. And the fact that you're invading the setbacks to create a noise hazard for the rest of us, in addition to looking in and building out the decks, I think that's part of your issue. The people who used to live in that house convinced our daughter that they could see right into her bedroom from that back deck, and she never opened her curtains. We have to keep our rear windows closed when our 147 Lagunitas neighbors are out at the pool to even be able to hear the TV. This is going to create the same thing on the front of the house. It's actually a serious problem for us. And Michael has more comments, but I just think you need to be aware that this is something that's in the hillside of what it is. And so you're not only building a big wall that we have to look at, and we do see those wish sticks. It's not like it's that screened. And if you're in our bedrooms, you see it more. And the idea of having a pool generating noise that we can't escape on our bedrooms is really distressing.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Rosenbaum, for your comments and your time tonight. Rebecca, are there any other people from the public with their hands up before I bring it back to the ADR?
I see no one else with their hands raised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Sorry, it looks like we have a phone caller.
Yes, hi, this is Scott Grace. I live at 7 Willow Hill, which is just one house up from Scott, below Alex, the Uline's house. And we've been here for 3 years now. Scott came to us about a year ago with his plans, and we were fully supportive then, fully supportive now. His house is beautiful. He's done a great job aesthetically with the enhancements that he's made, and the plans for the pool we thought would be a natural extension of his good taste. He has a wonderful family, kids we hope to be babysitters for our kids one day. We get together often, within the community here on Willow Hill. We're a small community, but very tight, family to family. And I have a pool above me and a pool below me. And it really is one of the real beauties here of living in Ross, is that you're able to enjoy your home, to be able to enjoy it most of the year round with the pool. We rarely hear our neighbors, but when they're in the pool splashing around with their kids, that brings me joy. So I have no issues with what Scott is proposing to do, fully support it, and I hope you all get behind it, as we all are here on Willow Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for your public comments. I will now bring it back to the ADR for a recommendation to the town council. Stephen, would you like to go first this time?
Sure, I'm happy to. I really appreciate the design changes that were made. I think the reduction in the height of the wall is great. And I think that the shape of the retaining wall as it's curved and as it, its new height and the way that the fencing was removed makes it now contextually appropriate in terms of topography. I think that the changes to the rear of the facade and the removal of the big deck and all of those kinds of architectural changes, as we all commented last time, are fantastic. So I really appreciate the design of the project. I can see too how the property suffers in terms of its zoning, in terms of the 5 acre setbacks. There are also the setbacks relative for hillside lots. And those are interesting, and I think that's something that the council will have to wrestle with. So I don't think I think that the way that it relates to the easement below and the parcel below makes it seem contextually kind of appropriate. but I will leave it to the council to comment on the approvability of the variance request.
Thank you, Stephen. Matthew, I'll be incredibly short. I concur with everything Stephen said. Laura?
Sure. Yeah, let's see. I mean, I think all the changes have helped make this design less dominant and less looming. And I think that taking into consideration that, I think like the structural engineering of this is not for us to decide. So if it is feasible and can be built safely, then that will be determined. And in terms of the noise, it doesn't seem fair that a hillside lot has to be quiet. But everybody, I mean, it just seems like that's kind of putting a little bit too much of an expectation on them to not be able to enjoy their property the same way that other properties nearby are. So the way that Stephen explained it was that he was open to supporting it, but wanted to leave it up to town council. Is that correct?
I support it from a design perspective. I don't think it's our charge to approve a variance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
So I'm going to just agree with that statement as well. I think the design has improved. The change of materials to the stone wall is a better, and bringing the soil up as well. So I will agree with both of them.
Great. Oh yeah, thanks to both of you. Matthew, you now have our comments for that project. Thank you to the property owners, their team, and all the neighbors that commented. We will now move on to 15 Skyland Way. And Matthew can present the project from the town's perspective before we turn it over to the design team and the owners.
Thank you, Chair and ADR group members. I will provide, again, just a brief introduction to this new project before the ADR group. The project at 15 Skyland Way proposes to renovate and add to an existing garage, and then construct a second-story addition above that existing garage. The project has no nonconformities with the underlying zoning district, so it complies with the FAR and the building coverage and the setbacks for the underlying zoning district. However, it does require an exception to the hillside lot setbacks because it is a hillside lot, and it is subject to those more extensive hillside lot setbacks. So, and I think, again, the ADR group's time is probably best spent with the architect explaining the project. The architect is Jared Polsky of Polsky Pearlstein Design, and I can present the plans while Jared presents. So that concludes my introduction. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
Should I begin?
You're up, Jared.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Matthew. As Matthew noted, we're not asking for any variances. It's a hillside lot, but it doesn't meet the hillside lot guidelines of as Ross specifies them. Maybe Matthew could better explain why it's called a hillside lot. It just
Sure.
In the Marin maps, I think.
There's two criteria for a hillside lot. One is having slope greater than 30%, and the other is containing a slope hazard 3 or 4 anywhere on the property. This property does not have a slope greater than 30%. However, it does contain the slope hazard. So while it's not subject to the hillside lot FAR, because the slope isn't in excess of 30%, it is subject to the hillside lot setbacks because it is a hillside lot under the ordinance. So that's essentially the case.
Well, what we're doing here is a very straightforward project. My clients would like to have a family room off their kitchen. And in doing so, they have to add a new stairway, a new laundry room, a new powder room. And so they access the garage below. We want to continue the aesthetic of the house. We're proposing to use materials that match the existing. The roof forms are matching the existing, and it should seem like a seamless whole, like it's always been there. That's the objective. The wood garage doors match the. I don't know if you saw. There's a gate just around the corner from the garage doors that has a wonderful gaze with big round knobs, and so we're trying to match that bit of wood to the garage doors. Other than that, it's a very straightforward addition, and happy to answer any questions.
Jared, I'm sorry, when I'm looking at the south elevation, the lower left picture here, the windows to the sides of the doors, the smaller ones, one looks, and maybe I just have a weird angle and I can't envision it correctly, but one looks like it's 1 to 2 feet wide, and the other one looks like it's twice as big, as opposed to being symmetrical. And there's something in front of it, and I can't tell
that's
what is
existing.
in front of that left side window.
There's a porch in front of the doors. That's existing. The only thing we're changing is the one window to the left of the doors. Maybe Matthew can point to that. Can you see? Yeah, there. We're changing that one window because now that corner of the room is the perfect place for a breakfast table, and it seemed kind of dark in that corner. So you can't really see these windows unless you're into the courtyard of the house. It's from the inner yard. You can't
Okay, thank you, sorry. Stephen or Laura, do you have any questions of either Jared or Matthew?
No, it appears that no part of this addition is in the area that's super steep, right?
Right. That's exactly right.
It's not in the slope hazard area.
No, not in the slope hazard.
Right. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more ADR questions, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this project?
I don't see anybody with their hand raised.
Okay, that's very quick. Great. Oh, sorry.
We have
the Cialis would like to make a comment.
Real hand raise.
We don't know.
I know,
We're
I
not
didn't know where that
technologically savvy.
button was. We're Kathy and Dave Shalley. We just wanted to say hi and introduce ourselves and thank everybody for their time. And we wanted to share that we have talked to each one of our neighbors in our shared driveway that's close to our home, and they all have said they don't have any issues with the work that we're proposing.
Great, thank you. Okay, I will bring it back to the ADR for comment. I'll go first on this one. It's my turn. I'm fine with the project as it is. When I looked at the story poles originally, it almost looked a little too stark, the new driveway, until I went back to the architectural drawings and saw the nice trellis above the doors and below the windows, which I think mitigate the only negative effect that I thought I saw at all. So I'm fine with everything as is. Stephen or Laura, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I also, from a design perspective, don't really have any comments to add. I think I don't have any issues with it. And it seemed like it wasn't going to be blocking any of the neighbors' views, maybe slightly visible, but it was actually seemed pretty well screened by trees already. So yeah, I'm supportive of it.
I also support the project as designed. I think it's nicely designed, and I support it fully.
Great. Okay, Matthew, you have our comments. Thank you to the property owners and their team for that. We will now move on to the next item, which is a conceptual advisory design review item on 40 Madrona Avenue. Matthew.
Thank you, Chair and ADR Group. So this is a conceptual advisory design review, meaning it's a pre-application review. It's strictly a recommendation to the applicant in terms of preliminary design. There's no staff report and staff hasn't really done an in-depth analysis of the project. We have identified that there's no major zoning issues that would prevent this type of project from moving forward. So with that, I'll just introduce Ken Lindstedt, who's the architect for this project, and I will be sharing the plans on the screen while Ken goes through the project plans, and then you can provide your comments and your recommendations to Ken prior to a formal application and prior to an actual formal advisory design review, which would occur when there is a formal application. So that concludes my introduction. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
So I'm up?
Yes.
Hi, Ken Lindstedt. Thanks so much, Matthew, for the introduction. And I guess are you going to share the screen? Maybe we just, this first page is really just kind of a floor area analysis, which I won't go through right now. I think maybe better just to kind of go through the main concept of what we're proposing here. What you see here is on the left is the existing condition and on the right, the proposed. But just by way of background, I wonder if we could kind of go right to the landscape site plan. Yeah, that one. So Chad and Amy Lewis are my clients at 40 Madrona. And I worked with them about 5 years ago, I think, to add that garage that you see on the left. I think it was my first garage addition only that I've done in quite some time because they're such nice people. And I think the big part of that project for Chad and Amy was to add the pool that you see on the upper left of the property and to create a beautiful garden. And Janelle Hobart did a wonderful job on the garden for that project, with the idea that later they would do a kind of a remodel to the existing house. So the existing house is kind of a mid-century, low sloped, a little bit of a ranch feel to it. And I think they very much want to kind of have a house that addresses the street in a more kind of positive way, and with a front door facing Madrona. Currently, you enter the house by going between the garage and the main body of the house and kind of wander through that courtyard and find a front door. And I think the idea here was, let's have a front door on Madrona, and then let that kind of that gap between the garage and the main house be more kind of like the back entry, a little bit more of a secret garden approach. So the garden is revealed when you come into the house. So I'd say the big moves here are, and let's maybe go to the floor plans now. Let's see. So on the left is existing. Their primary goals are they both have aging parents. They would like to take advantage of the ADU so that when their parents visit, they have a place to be in the house that is separate. I think it's a great space for kind of aging parents for this ADU opportunity. We have it at the front of the house, which is kind of an interesting location for it. But in fact, on this property, the front of the house is, I'll say it's probably the least desirable from a public interaction standpoint. So it seems kind of like a really good place to locate the ADU away from the main kind of activities of the family. But at the same time, we have a front door that goes into a nice kind of long entry hall, stair to the left that goes up to the second floor. And then that leads you into the main house, but there is a separation between the ADU at that point. The goal, though, also was to get the kids who currently have their bedrooms right at the front of the house, kind of in a very dark area, to get them up. There's some very tall redwoods surrounding this property that are beautiful, but also are a bit shady. So they really wanted their daughter's bedrooms to be upstairs. So we designed this in a way to add bedrooms above the ADU and add a kind of an entry hall that really had a very inviting feel when you come in the front door. Also part of this project is to modify the existing master bedroom, which is at the north side of the property. That's really just kind of a roof move that we're looking at, not really adding any space. And then the area between the north and south kind of masses of this house is a one-story structure that has a roof terrace over it. So maybe best just to kind of move right to the elevations. So this is from Madrona, and the garage on the left exists. It has some weathered wood siding, metal roof. And so the idea for the massing here was I wanted to match the stair hall that you see just to the right of the garage with the same material so that the garage doesn't seem like so much of an outlier. So I'd say the garage and the stair hall kind of act in tandem here, kind of as a unit. We've added this little terrace between the two, kind of as a little bit of whimsy and also as a nice place in this upper sitting room to get out and enjoy the outdoors and kind of look toward the entry and out to the backyard. We have the entry to the house just to the right of that stair hall. And that's serving a little bit as a gap between the stair hall form and what I call like the main body of the house. And that main body of the house we see as kind of a painted, clapboard siding that would be kind of a dark gray with a kind of a dark fiberglass shingle roof. If we go to the next slide, this is if you are standing in the middle of the garden, like at the pool looking toward the house. So to the left there is the existing master suite that we've basically just changed the pitch of the roof to match the pitch of the roof at the front, which is 8 and 12. And you see those people standing upstairs on a little roof terrace. And then between that roof terrace and the master to the left, we want to just have that be a garden that we've brought upstairs. So that's a green roof. And then if we go to the next slide, this is if we're cutting through the living room of the main house with the terrace up above. To the right, we're looking at the back of the garage, which we kind of have this axial relationship between the garage and the pool. You see a little gate that leads, under that terrace to the garden. And then the way we've added to the house, we've got a 2-story structure that steps down the hill. And below, you can see that there's a rock base to that form to the left. And below that is a root cellar for storage. And if we go to the next one. So this is from the north side of the house. That really is kind of existing more or less, except that you'll notice that those taller windows in the middle, that's currently a stepped form on the house that we would like to raise the roof up a bit to add a little bit of volume to the stair that leads up to the master. And I think that is the substance of what we're doing for this project. Oh, except here's the back. Yeah. Okay, so at the back, you see that root cellar to the left below the 1-story addition. So this is essentially a house that has two 2-story elements on either side and this bridging element in between. And actually trying to have a little bit more of a feeling of a house that fits in with the older Ross feel. So I'd say this is a little bit of a, the old Ross meets a little bit more of a contemporary feel. Yeah, so those are the existing elevations.
And can you put the existing front elevation on there? Where the garage is sort of on your left, that street view?
That one.
Great, okay. Now could you go all the way back to your rendering of what it will be of the proposal?
That one.
There, perfect, thanks. Sorry, were you done? It seemed like you were.
I think I'm done.
Okay, so first of all, I think it looks very nice. My one comment, well, actually, one of the ADR members wrote something, and I'm not sure if it was a public comment or just to us. It was more to the owners, and she was questioning and she couldn't be here tonight. She was questioning the green roof and wondering just making sure that they were aware of potential maintenance issues going forward, just making sure that's as low maintenance as they hope it is. For me, the only sort of issue I might see is in the stairwell, it's a very large window. And it sort of reminds me of that house that you designed on Fernhill, the White House. It's very beautiful, great landscaping. You know, it sits, I don't know, 745 feet back from the road where the staircase is. It's very nice. This stairwell, I believe, would be very close to the road.
Yeah.
And I would worry about, as many of the ADR members like to point out, a very large lantern effect from that stairwell, because often stairwells have their lights on, you know, for hours at a time as people are home walking to and fro in the house. So for me, that's sort of the only problem or potential problem that I noticed.
Got it.
But everything else looks very nice. Stephen and Laura, would you like to comment for Ken and give he and his clients any guidance or compliments?
Sure. I think it's very well designed and really is nice. And I remember when the garage came to us that we were pleased to review it, pleased to endorse it, and hopeful that the rest of the house would be changed to go along with it. And so I'm excited to see this. I'm a little confused about the part of the house that is in the beyond the setbacks. And maybe you can point out, Ken, does that get larger there? And so you'd be asking for a kind of a non-conformity permit?
I think it's a non-conformity to raise the roof.
To raise the roof in the area of the non-conformance,
Yes,
right? And so the house is conformant, as I understand it, in all other ways, or
Yes.
would be. And so I you know, with the exception of maybe some windows that they're too big or something else that's too blank, but obviously it's not. You've designed it very well. I'd be concerned about exacerbating that nonconformity really only if it negatively affects someone that is vocal about it. If it challenges someone's privacy, then it might be hard to support that change, exacerbating that nonconformity. But I don't know that yet. I don't know the context of that area there, of that lot. I mean, I know the house well from the street perspective, and I think it really looks lovely. So I think it looks great.
Thank you.
And as the homeowner, I did want to say that right behind me is the actual drawing. Just if you guys didn't put that together, there it is.
Great. Can I, since this is not, it used to not be a formal at this conceptual, and we could just kind of kibitz back and forth. Am I allowed to kind of comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is very informal. Yes.
Okay, great. So I understand your comment about the big window, Mark. The context that I'm thinking about right now is the massive redwood trees that if I drew them on here, you wouldn't see the house. And one thing that Chad in particular has always asked me for is he wants more light. And that stair hall, how do I get light into that stair hall? So, you know, that's the balance here. Is the front of this house is super dark. And also I would say that window is probably directly across from Spring Street. It's not across from a neighbor. So I do understand that lantern effect. I'm just giving you the context of why that window is trying to be a bit bigger, just to kind of really fill that upstairs with light, which they tend not to get a lot of at the front of the house.
Okay, and since Mark and Joey were both not here, and each of them always mentions lantern effect every meeting, I felt I had to.
Yeah, no, and I get it.
Okay.
I see, Ken, that you're just changing the roof line in that area of nonconformity. It's really the bulk and mass is already there.
It's already there, yeah. That's
So I think that seems totally reasonable. I would just be sensitive to window placement there, and if we're creating something new that is
and privacy.
challenging.
Yeah.
Exactly, for
I
privacy.
understand.
But
Yep.
otherwise, it seems totally appropriate. Yeah.
That was one of the comments I was going to add. If you go to that, I think it's the north elevation. There's a balcony coming off of the living room, I think.
Yes.
And it's in the setback.
I think it's one more elevation, two more. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Right over that little door.
Mhm.
You know, they
so-
wanted to look out at their beautiful garden. And so I guess that'll be a question with council, is what you're saying, is whether we can project that out as a balcony element.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Actually, because we're kibutzing here, can I ask a question about that? If it's a jealousy window, if it doesn't go out, would
What
that
do
be
you mean
conforming?
by-
Well, or a Juliet.
A
window.
Juliet.
You mean the
Yeah.
balcony? Yeah.
Yeah, because right now it is a window, that's a completely window there, but if it doesn't, again, I think one of the things as the homeowner, I'm always mindful of is trying to conform within the original planning administrative versus having to extend the process and go through city council. So that's just I was just thinking out loud about that.
So Chad,
We
you're
still have
saying
to go
make
through
it
the same
no-
process. We still have to go through the same process of ADR and then council approval, and
Got it.
modifying the structure in that area of nonconformity just simply by reconstructing it requires the nonconformity permit. But I think subjectively, all the folks would be looking at, does it exacerbate the nonconformity or create something that would bum someone out? And it doesn't seem in terms of the change to the roof line that it would or anything, but the balcony is something interesting that if it would challenge someone's privacy, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I didn't see like how close the property behind you is, so I was just looking from the street today, so I'm not sure if it is an issue, but just something that I noticed in the drawings. But yeah, I think it's a beautiful design as well. And you know, at first I was a little bit questioning why all the bulk and mass was added to the street side, but it is, you know, kind of concealed by those trees that are there some, and perhaps it is the least impactful to the other residences nearby, so.
Yep.
And that across the street is that tall garage or whatever it is. There's kind of a blank wall. And so it kind of, I think it responds to the context pretty well.
And our neighbor, I actually had over today, who I'm very close with, and he loves the design and said he'll write any support that is needed. I've had 10 people actually offer to write something. We're all neighbors. So but specifically to that one location you're talking about, Laura, is the neighbor there. There's all these redwoods between us, but he is that kind of big gray house on the hill, the Martins.
Okay, thank you. Well, that looks like a great project and I look forward to seeing it when it comes back.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ken and Chad.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so the next agenda item, before Matthew does what he's going to do here, I had a comment from a town council member. We had something last month in ADR where, as someone was presenting a project, the neighbors asked for more screening. The landscape person for the owner of the project said, oh, we can put in 36-inch whatevers. And we never referenced that again. And it was difficult when it got to the town council because we did not say we approve it with those changes. And the owners thought that they didn't have to do it because we didn't tell them they had to do it, but the neighbors thought that they had sort of promised to do it. So in the future, when that happens, we should make our best efforts to reiterate that, yes, the owner has offered to do this, and therefore that is now part of their proposal that we're recommending to go forward. Or we don't think they need to do it, but we should reference it because it got a little confusing to the town council. Okay, sorry, your floor now, Matthew, or Rebecca, who's ever going to do the information and discussion.
That would be me. We're on the in-person meeting item, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So tonight, I'd just like to continue the conversation you guys had at the April ADR meeting about returning to in-person meetings with having the Zoom component of those in-person meetings. I did watch the YouTube of that portion of the last meeting to sort of get caught up in what was going on. It sounds like perhaps you were promised a memo about the whether or not ADR members some could be in town hall and some could be at home. I don't think you've received that memo yet. Should we go back to this in-person meetings with one of the members probably still not wanting to return to in-person meetings? So the question tonight is, how are you feeling about returning to in-person meetings? I know at that last meeting, it's kind of referenced that there was a small surge going on. I know, at least for my family, I get a notice every day. My kids have been exposed to COVID. It seems like it's surging sort of probably more now than it was last month. So if we could just, I know there's only 3 of us here tonight, but if we could just get some input on that, on how you're feeling about returning to in-person.
Can I say too, I presented a project to the town of Woodside yesterday. And it was a combination. Part of our team even went to present it there, meaning the landscape architect, and I presented from home because our 8th grader is positive, or I mean, our 2nd grader is positive right now. And so I didn't want to be the source of this, right? But anyway, it was a total hybrid, and the ADR, or their equivalent, was mostly remote, and then one member was on the dais with the planning director, and then some neighbors were in the room and some were out, and obviously we were split, and it worked great. I don't know how they kind of were managing it technologically. They just had a kind of a camera that was on the room. It wasn't trained on anyone particularly. It was kind of just on the room. And anyway, it worked really well. So if it's legal, if our attorney and everyone thinks that it's doable technologically or legally, I think a hybrid was totally worked out fine from my perspective last night. For my part, I'd be happy to go in. I'm comfortable with that after Bo is tested negative. But I'm happy to go and don't mind either way.
I personally would like to get back to in-person. And it does seem with the cameras that they've set up for town council that we should be able to do some type of hybrid, hopefully. It sounds like Mark will be at least another month with the current surge before he feels comfortable joining us. But I'm certainly comfortable going in person at this time, and would like to do what we could to include members who might not feel comfortable going back at this time.
Yeah, I'm fine either way. Zoom is convenient because I have 2 small kids, but it's fine to come in person as well. So I'll be at the next meeting, whether it's Zoom or in person, and then the July one, I am out of town.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just need to talk to our town attorney regarding, I know if there's a discretionary hearing and a decision is being made, that should one of the hearing body members be in a separate location. There's special noticing requirements. They have to put the agenda up, say they're on vacation, outside their hotel room door, and presumably allow people from the public in. So I'm just not sure in this instance, because it's just it is an advisory review committee. It's not necessarily a decision-making board. So I will follow up with Ben Stock on that, and just because it sounds like the best outcome would be for some of the ADR members to be in town hall and to have the option of doing Zoom should they have a child with COVID or they're traveling, or any of the reasons. Does that sound right?
I think that would be ideal if it's not unreasonable.
Yes, well, and it also would be better for applicants if we had the Zoom option, because who knows, maybe the day before one or more of us gets a positive test in the family or by ourselves, and that way we could still sit in front of the Zoom and not infect people, but still keep the projects moving along as we always like to do.
Okay, that's
so I think that hybrid would definitely be the best option for making sure that, the meetings do go forward when there's a surge.
Right. And so then if I can get the information from Ben prior to our next meeting, would you be willing to do the next one hybrid, or do you want to do one more Zoom only and then go to a hybrid?
Don't mind either way.
I'd prefer to, start hybrid as soon as possible. If that's next month, great. If it's the next month after that, great. I would just think as soon as we can do it, let's do it. Well, and then once we finish this, we need to talk about July, because I think we actually have an issue there.
Okay, I don't have any more questions on this topic.
Okay, regarding July, I am leaving town on July 16th. And Laura just mentioned that she is not going to be in town, and Joey has already told us that she will not be in town. So I'm wondering if we could, I'm not sure if people are all here the first 11 days of July. I know I am, and Joey is. So if we had at least one more person who was here those first 10, 11 days of July, it would be great if we could move it up. Even if it didn't happen to be a Tuesday, it could be some other day of the week. I don't know that Tuesday is necessarily sacred as far as ADR is concerned.
Yeah, I'm flexible. I'm gone the 16th to 23rd, so anytime before or after.
Okay, so you're also leaving, so before the 16th, and I think what Joey said was, it was maybe the 13th and earlier she was around. Let me look at the
5th would be a poor day to do it, right?
Yeah.
So the 12th might be good. Is that what you're saying, Mark?
Well, so I would have said the 12th, but that particular day, just that one day does not work with Joey. So, Monday the 11th, or
Actually, Monday the 11th, I'm working with the Andrew Hill, our housing element consultant, and we're having a community workshop either July 11th or 12th. We haven't pinned down which day. So I'm sorry, it will not be the 11th because Krista is on her way. So the 11th would work.
So maybe the 11th, or the previous week, we could do the 6th or the 7th, which would be the Wednesday or the Thursday, depending on town staff availability.
I'm out, but that's I'm only one.
Those 2 days. So you're out that week.
I feel like the 4th of July week might be difficult. For
Good
people
point.
to
So
go.
maybe Monday, July 11th is the best?
That works for me. I can send out an email to everybody on the ADR just to confirm that that day would work.
Instead of what was going to be the 19th.
Correct.
But yeah, and then the sooner we can figure that out, the better, just so the applicants know, because I know they have to get their paperwork in
Right.
at a certain point, and notifications, et
And
cetera.
noticing, yeah. Okay, I can either do that. I'll probably do it first thing in the morning.
Okay.
Is there anything else on our agenda?
Mark, I'm sorry I couldn't come down with the final recommendation on that roof, dude. I'm sorry.
I've never seen a non-vote before.
I wish the other people were here. I'm so uncomfortable.
That's an abstain. It's too bad you don't have a conflict of interest. You could have claimed that. Yeah. Okay, that's all fine. Well, great to see everybody, and hopefully next month or potentially July, we'll all be in person and not infecting each other.
Correct. Nice to meet you all.
Oh, sorry. I move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Hi, guys.
I think someone needs to second that.
I second that. I
Great.
second that. Yeah.
I'm glad you did that before you left. We'd be here forever. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.